Hello, everyone. Welcome to Influitive Live, this featured fireside chat session on who owns the customer. I am joined by an excellent panel today. First, we have Sandy Miranda, Chief Customer Officer at Power DMS. Hello, Sandy.
Hello.
And we have Nancy Port, Vice President of Global Customer Experience at Verint. Hello, Nancy.
Hi.
And we also have Cheryl Alden, Senior Vice President of Marketing at Point Click Care. Hello, Cheryl. And last but not least, we have Alessio Artufo, Chief Revenue Officer at Docebo. Hello, Alessio.
Hi, Ben.
Well, we have a great topic, and I'd love to dive right in. So I'm going to ask you the first question. In your respective roles, what is your responsibility around the customer? And I'd like to start with Nancy.
Thank you, Dan. We have a great kind of setup at Verint around customer experience. We've been in existence for almost 6 years now, and the department has grown. We started out as really a customer analytics department, collecting satisfaction and loyalty data. And then we grew to also include our advocacy program, because our whole job was creating advocates. So we now take care of nurturing and recruiting our advocates. And then we've expanded now to also design and execute engagement programs for customers. So customer experience keeps growing.
Great, thank you. Alessio, would you like to go next?
100%. Docebo, which is the company at which I'm the Chief Revenue Officer, is a learning technology platform, a learning management system that helps corporations to deliver learning programs to both employees and customers. My responsibility, I look after the marketing organization, and the goals there are really to tell the story of what problems Docebo solves best in the realm of the learning technology space through sales execution. And my main goal is to create a sales environment that really focuses on marketing and selling to those organizations where we can do our best job. And eventually in the customer experience is where it all ties together, offering true learning advisory, learning consulting, and making available to our customers a set of experts that help our customers achieve both the key business outcomes, so the strategic outcomes from the platform and the subscription, as well as their operational outcomes.
Very good, thank you. Cheryl.
So we're a little bit in figuring this out right now. So I'm going to tell you what it is today. It might change by next week, but we're having some good conversations. We actually just hired a dedicated customer experience or a function within the company who sits in customer care. We also have a customer success organization who has a lot of one-to-one engagement with our customers, selling into healthcare. There's a lot of deep domain expertise required. In marketing, we actually own most of the engagement programs with our customers. They may be sprouted in another department, but they're executed and sort of driven through us. We also own customer marketing advocacy and customer community.
Fantastic, thank you. And Sandy.
Yes, so my team is responsible for essentially all of the different roles after the sale. So we have the training and education team. They're responsible for the onboarding portion of the application, making sure that we are communicative through the community platform that we also have. We also have the customer success advisors, and then the service desk. Of course, we are the central point in the organization. We work very, very closely with all of the other groups in our organization to make sure that we're properly aligned and that we're having the right conversations and making the right decisions for our customers.
Great, thank you. So we hear a lot and read a lot about the power is shifted from the seller to the buyer, and it's done so at maybe a more rapid pace over the years. In your experience, how has that affected what you do today or what you're planning to do tomorrow?
I think for us, as we think about the buyer journey, and that's changed a lot, and this is really driving a lot of really good conversations for us internally, going back to our topic today, as your definition of a customer and when you need to engage with a customer is quite frequently and to a good extent before they become a customer. So that's how it's showing up for us, is we're looking at, for marketing, our role being more focused on just the initial buyer journey, but the actual full life cycle as a customer, particularly as a SaaS business. For us, it's very important to ensure that it's not just buying journey, but it's the full life cycle engagement with customers, and that's changing how we see that relationship.
I also think that this change has created entire organizations to change how they do business. As I was thinking about this panel, it occurred to me that when I had my first job in customer experience, we had the same topic: who owns the customer? But the difference was, it was because nobody wanted to own the customer. I had a friend who said, I want to go to marketing because I don't want to have to talk to customers. And then the salespeople were all excited because their job was to go out there and get new logos, new customers. And as soon as they signed that customer, they threw it over the transom and they hoped somebody would catch them, because the whole idea of working with existing customers was not sexy. It wasn't cool. And it's those people over there. I can honestly tell you, I was even in an organization that we had outgrown our space, and someone suggested that our department maybe get moved off site because we were so disconnected, because we dealt with existing customers and they were all with getting new customers. So you don't see that today. Today in organizations, you're seeing everybody, the opposite. Everybody wants to own the customer, because that is how we are going to survive as an organization. We're going to go beyond always looking for new customers and really developing loyalty within our existing customer base. So I would say it not only changes what I do, but it changes what our entire organization now is doing, and it changes the importance of customer experience. So I love it, but the customer is now the center of I think, most businesses, at least those that are going to succeed.
Yeah, I think for us, we've always had a very connected community within our customer base. So in how it's changed our dynamics, we've really always focused on them being the center of everything. I think from an industry perspective, it just really changes the fact that you have to think about all of the customers are talking to each other, right? And they are looking at each other to really make what is that next buying decision. It's not so much solely on your own reputation or the product that you're putting out, but what has been the experience that customer has had with you as an organization? What has been the experience that they've had with your product? And then that information is what they're sharing with others. And that's really what gives them the power as the customer, as a unit. Now, I think that wasn't there before.
I think one thing that has changed significantly, and one hasn't at all. The first one that has changed significantly in the past 10 years, let's say, is with the affirmation of the SaaS model, freemium models. Buyers' expectations have changed over time, and buyers these days come to the table a lot more ready, aware, educated about the competitive landscape, because they have invested resources and time in actually looking at 4, 5, 6 different systems, which perhaps in the past they wouldn't be, because they were sucked in this one vendor that put them through the older school enterprise model process, in which you really get in and you know, it's really hard to get to see what we're talking about after 2 months that we're in the conversation, right? And so at this point, you're so tired that you don't want to go and work with another 6 vendors because you don't have the time to do that, right? So that game has shifted a lot. And the repercussion on the organizational design is that now when buyers come to the table, they're a lot more educated. So the people that have to work with them have to be more educated in reflection, because now they have to be ready to answer to more difficult questions. So now the BDR organizations that on average were more junior in the past, you can't have that anymore, because the imprinting and the questions you're going to be answering are a lot more difficult than maybe in the past would have been right off the bat. That's one thing. So that is a change where I don't think there's a change at all. And our job as customer experience experts is to really continue that and modernize. Is acquiring net new customers is expensive. And that hasn't changed. So our job of actually creating fans across our customer base and making them sing our praises is just the same as it was, 15 or so years ago, except now the ways we go about doing that are very different. Segmentation is slightly different. So the tactics within customer experience have probably changed, but the psychological principles of really making happy your customers and the unit economics behind it really haven't changed much. That's my view on it.
Cool. So let's go around the horn. You each are heads of your departments. Tell us why you think you should own the customer. And if you don't think you should own the customer, why is that as well? Cheryl, how about you start?
Sure. So I don't really have a specific answer. I'd love to be able to argue that I think marketing should, own the customer because that's who I'm representing. But at the same time, we are having really active conversations right now. So what I will say is customer experience. I think the contract that you sign with a customer on expectations is really a contract with the brand. And so when people say, who owns the customer experience? I think that the brand owns the customer. So then the question becomes, who owns the brand? And, as gatekeepers of the brand in marketing, we are having healthy conversations to say across the organization, we need to have a more proactive, prescriptive approach around customer experience. And that is something that we have struggled with. We have always made sure that we hired good people. And we sell into healthcare, and they're very they have a lot of, sort of special needs in terms of support and domain expertise. As we have grown, we're now about 1,600 people. It's important for us to ensure that there is a consistent experience and it's at a level that we want it to be at. We're in an enviable position. We have a north of 99% lifetime customer retention rate, and we're month to month. So our customers tend to stay with us, but we also recognize how important it is to keep it that way. And so we're looking at, the ownership of the customer is being shared across the organization in a collaborative, sort of coordinated way.
Boy, Cheryl she threw down the gauntlet. 99% retention rate. Who else? She has to own the customer.
That's right.
Anyway,
we worked hard for that. We worked very hard for that. We're proud of it. We're proud.
Very impressive.
I would say there's in our organization and a lot of organizations, I think there's partners in ownership, and I think there's the owner of the design of the customer experience, and then the owner of the execution, and it's very hard to do both at one time. And in our organization, the customer experience team is really involved in the analytics side, the data, customer expectations, how we're meeting those expectations, and then sharing those insights with the departments, and then almost being that internal consultant. What do we need to change? How do we change it? Do we journey map? Do we do process realignment? We serve as that design owner. So we kind of own that entire journey. But the execution at the interaction level is by the operational departments, and they certainly own that, and a lot of them have the relationships with the customers. So I think to serve today's customer, you almost have to have that design, the design and data side, and then the actual execution side, and it works really well when you've got that partnership.
Nancy, is there a starting and stopping point in the customer lifecycle that you have responsibility for?
No. I mean, that's one thing that makes it work. There's no part of the cycle that I'm hands off. Everything that directly interacts with the customer, but also whatever impacts the customer, because you might argue that departments like billing and maybe departments that don't directly touch the customer are not part of the experience. But we find exactly the opposite. Sometimes they're the ones that actually impact it negatively and sometimes positively. But and have to be considered in the whole experience. So there really isn't any beginning and end to what we do around the customer experience.
And you subscribe to what Cheryl had said, so the customer is actually the prospect who then becomes a customer and goes on that journey with your company.
Yeah, I do. And the other thing that Cheryl, I think, really hit a chord with me is the fact that the customer experience, I believe, is your brand, because that is what is perceived and seen. So you can put a lot of pretty words to it and say, well, our brand looks like this and looks like this, but it's what the customer perceives that is truly your brand, and it has to be integrated into that. So I think we miss that point every once in a while organizationally, but the organizations who have embraced that really resonate well with their customers and prospects. As
a marketer, Nancy, you just touched on that marketing stereotype of pictures and words and all the fun stuff in marketing. I don't know if they should control the customer.
Yep.
Well, that's not today's marketer. The one who didn't want to talk to customers. That's not today's marketer, is it? Because right. Today's marketing organization is very involved with the customer. Thank goodness.
Can I just follow up there, Nancy? Just really quickly, did you, as you're thinking about customer experience, did it change for you in your organization, whether that was a proactive approach or a reactive? And I say that in the context of when our organization first sort of dipped our toe on customer experience, it started out as more of a let's look around for the things that irritate our customers and then just not do those things. And it was still very transactional in nature. It was kind of, pulling, slivers out of paws. Did that change for you, or really anybody here, in terms of who drives the design?
I'll tell you, it really, really changed for us. We started out looking at the journey and everything we learned, and I want the others to answer, so I'll be quick. But we started fixing stuff, the find and fix. We're like, well, that little thing doesn't work in services, so maybe we could do that, and so we got good at that, but then we really had to look at the whole process and redesign that. But then we got to the point where, there has to be proactive engagement to make this relationship work too. And so that's when the advocacy program came over to customer experience. And then we also added a team that really does that proactive engagement around programs. So it's sort of a maturity sequence that we had to go through to get past just fixing stuff.
So Sandy, as Chief Customer Officer, wouldn't every one of these people in this panel be reporting to you if they were all working at your company?
Well, at our organization, we don't quite do it that way. But I would definitely echo a lot of what everyone is saying. I do think that, for us personally, it changed whenever we went from being a install-based company to moving to SaaS, as Alicia mentioned before, right? With the new SaaS model, it really forces you to take a look at, okay, well, your customer really, they're going to have this experience and this decision to make on a yearly basis on whether or not they want to stay. And so that's when you really start looking at all of the individual moments in time that customer is either going to need you, or you want to be proactive and really share with them some of the other greater things that you're doing. So I think from a ownership perspective, I like to live by the philosophy that everyone at the organization owns the customer. If, as an organization for us, it was really important to put in our mission statement that, our mission is to help our customers, and really clearly call it out, so that every day, as any of the employees are deciding what is the most important thing that I'm going to work on today, it's really about how is it going to impact that customer. And like Nancy was mentioning, it's often forgotten some of the areas within the business that do interact with the customers in some shape or form, and not including them in those decisions or as you're journey mapping. Most importantly, it's sometimes lost, and it makes all of the difference of making sure that even that offboarding of your customer, once they decide that they have to leave for whatever reason, is done in such a way that that experience doesn't keep them from not thinking about you whenever they go to their next venture, but that they'll take you with them to wherever they're going.
So our CEO often says, if everyone owns the project or everyone owns the customer, nobody owns the project or nobody owns the customer. So Alessio, if at the end of the day, the buck stops with revenue, don't you own the customer?
Look, a lot has been said about customer ownership, and I agree with a lot that has been said. And it's hard to add value on top of so many smart comments. So I'm going to try to flip the coin and look at it from the end of the process and reverse it, engineer it. At the end of the day, owning what? What do we want our customers to accomplish? We want them to accomplish the outcomes that they intended to achieve to begin with. And what I found over time, at least in Docebo, as serving small, mid-sized, and enterprise organizations, and that's the topic of segmentation that is such a complex one for revenue leaders. What we found is that there are essentially two types of outcomes that customers want to achieve. One, we call it operating set of outcomes. In that operating set of outcomes in our world may be a learning and development administrator that in their learning platform wants to have a better, more beautiful looking learning experience or more increased learning completions. And then you have strategic business outcomes. They implement an LMS to decrease their customer churn or to increase their upsell or other more high level goals. So now working backwards, it seems counterintuitive to me that there's a single individual that can own all these business outcomes. It is in fact a team sport. Now, the team sport goes back to, okay, what are the right individuals to solve for those problems? And how do we manage the accountability across these people, which I think that's why your CEO says, if everybody owns the account, nobody owns it. I respectfully disagree with that. I think that a team in which there are clear roles, very well defined, in which everybody knows where they stand and what they're responsible for, and they play together, creates a team that is empowered to make customers achieve multiple objectives. And I know it's a very complex topic, and that's why it's not easy to crack the code of it.
True. I do believe it's a team sport. And so now that's a good segue into kind of tying back to what Nancy was saying, where everyone wants to own the customer. It is a team sport. And essentially it's like everyone wants to reach out to customers. How do you orchestrate and control that so that you don't fatigue and over communicate with the customers, because you're just one company, they're getting this from 50 companies and they're going to get very, very frustrated with the over communication. How do you control that?
Yeah, I think for us, that was something that it's true. Everyone wants to reach out to the customer. And so you have to be very intentional. And it goes back to my previous comments of making sure that you're looking at what are all of the different moments in time that customer is either going to need you or that you want to present something to that customer. So at Power DMS, what we did is we spent all of last year, actually, we had our director of marketing, customer marketing. He focused on working with all of the different departments to identify every single touch point that we had. And what did all of the different assets involved look like? Were they really delivering on what, to Alicio's point, were they delivering on those outcomes that we were expecting at those different touch points? And then identifying what are the different measurables that we can put in there to make sure that as they're transitioning to this customer journey, that things are going in the direction that one would hope. So I think definitely putting a focus in intentionality and documenting it, putting it in a journey map so that you can see, okay, within onboarding, we're sending them a newsletter, we're sending them their invoice. The sales rep is calling to find out how the experience is going. Like you said, there's other folks that are doing the same thing for other pieces of software. So you have to build it out in a journey map and share it with the company so everyone's aware.
I'll take a different, slightly different approach on that. This may seem like a plug for Influitive, so I'm going to apologize in advance, Dan. But I was finding out as we were doing a bit of an audit internally around, where are communications going out to customers across the organization. And I'd be in a meeting and someone would say, "Oh yeah, the ops team sent a newsletter out to the customers last week," and I said, "A newsletter? First of all, who sends newsletters? But secondly, why are they doing this?" And so what we kind of came back, and that was one of the driving decisions around us having an online customer community. And really, instead of us communicating out and pushing out from every team, we gave one centralized location where we wanted to be able to influence the behavior of customers. So they know one place to go to get everything they need, and they can engage across the organization with people. So, they don't get direct communications from product managers, but they love the availability to be in a space where they can, post and hear back. So, our solution to that was, let's not try to, outside of, crisis communications, but outside of that, let's create one space where our customers learn to go to. And then we'll put everything that they need and manage those interactions and engagements through that.
Great, thank you. Nancy, you were going to say something?
Well, I was going to only violently agree to both points. I'd love to disagree, but on communication, I think it's so important to get right. And so the journey mapping of all the touch points are critical. But we're finding more and more that making sure your customers are in the community and you're effectively managing your online community is the best way to communicate with them, because you don't always know who all your customers are. I mean, which marketing department hasn't struggled with the right contacts, the right contacts for the right accounts, who's not putting them in Salesforce, who's not updating them, and all of that, where when you have a community and you invite them, and you have your customers there, it's just it's a beautiful new way to communicate with customers. So more and more we're finding we're not sending out the communications as much as having customers in the community, and then they reach out for the type of communication that they need at the time. It's much more timely, much more targeted.
Do each of you feel as though you have a clear 360-degree view of your customers? If so, how? And if not, what's missing?
I'll humbly respond that this is an area in which we have had to learn and in which we are making changes as we speak. As we have continued to move up market, back, if I can think of 2013, 2014, I would say that our ideal customer profile was a sub 500 employee organization. To this day, an ideal customer is an organization that has between 500 and 10,000 employees, and it's much more complex in their needs and solution. Following along that path, the customer committee or the set of personas involved has increased tremendously. And what we have found is that we were exceptionally good culturally, historically in the business at managing at the power user or the individuals that are in the system every day. Where we were falling short and we're executing strategies to overcome this is to bring on the same page continuously, not only at QBR level, but in the journey of the customer, also, the senior management, the directors, the vice presidents actually sponsor the initiative to make sure that both their power users and the people that are actually sponsoring the initiative and owning the budget continue to understand that we're doing this, those strategic outcomes that we spoke about, and see that ultimately the project is a success according to shared criteria. And I spoke to a bunch of senior executives on customer side, and I asked them the question flat out, how would it be the best way to engage you more frequently? We speak to your team a lot, but you don't really show up. Why is the case? And there seems to be consensus about, because the content that you guys are creating is more targeted towards the actual users of the platform. It's less for me. And so we're thinking about that content in a slightly different way to accomplish the goal of both addressing, sure, the power users, they remain our number one person in mind, but also the strategic decision makers.
Very good.
I like that point. From our perspective, we do not have a 360-degree view. We strive for one where we aspire to get there eventually. But I think the point that was made earlier, just around the amount of noise that's out there for customers, the amount of communications and content they're getting, it is so important now that make sure you cut through that, and relevance and context and putting information they care about in front of them is so critical. And so for us, that 360 view where we can get a centralized customer intelligence that we can use for the personalization they're looking for, particularly, post-COVID, we have more organizations that are, going digital. Certainly for us in healthcare, it's changed the game. So really important for us to be able to get that sort of customer, intelligence in a way that we can mine that and use it to get back out to the customers and to make sure we're talking about the things they care about.
Sandy, you want to close it? Any closing thoughts on that?
The 360 degree view of the customer is something that we will always be in pursuit of. And the reason I say that is customer expectations and the world just keeps changing. We've seen what's happened over the past few months, and nobody could have seen that. And it has resulted in a lot of different changes for each of us professionally and personally, but it also totally changes customer expectations. And so if we had that 360 view 3 months ago, I think we'd be pretty confident we don't have it now. So things are always changing, and I think it's a wonderful vision. But if I confess to living in reality, I would say never going to happen. It'd be nice.
Yeah. Sandy?
No, I love how Nancy said it. If we had it before, we certainly don't have it anymore, right? I think everything changes so very quickly with our customers. So I think having just the dialogue with them at the very beginning of the relationship and really staying laser focused on what is important to them constantly, and acknowledging the fact of their changing worlds as well as ours, and making that, making their reality our reality is definitely the best way to go. But as I was saying, and very excited about how we spent a year looking at our customer journey last year and documenting everything, you can only imagine, and that's why I laugh at what Nancy just said. We've changed many things just in the last 3 months, and so having that 360 is good, but consistently knowing and acknowledging that it's going to change and make those changes quickly.
Well, I'm very disappointed that we couldn't come to a conclusion that marketing owns the customer. That's a bummer, but it's clear that there's a consensus that it's a team sport in working with customers. And it's very clear to me that each of you are champions and leaders of your respective organizations to help and engage with customers going forward. So thank you all for your time. This has been a fantastic session. I hope you enjoy the rest of the show. If you have any questions in the audience, feel free to post them in the discussion below, and have a great rest of the event, everyone. Thank you very much, panel.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Bye.
And now it's everyone's favorite question time. Let's get asking.